Hello and welcome to this demo on input methods and input activities. In this video, we'll first discuss the concept of input methods and input activities and their role in automation. We'll then move on to demonstrate how to use them in practice by walking through the process of creating an automation process for depositing a transaction using the WI application. Let's begin. First, let's add the Use Application or Browser activity. It opens a web browser page or desktop application for use in UI automation. Let's indicate our target application. Using the Application Path property, we can determine the address of the executable on the machine. If the application isn't open, it'll open it when the process is executed. The New Instance button beside the application path or browser URL field will open a new instance of the application or browser with the configurations specified in the Options Browser Properties section. In this way, we can test the activity and prevent errors from occurring during runtime. When the application is already open, a pop-up window appears requesting instructions on how to proceed. We have three options: focus on the existing instance, open a new one, or cancel. Since we don't wish to open any new instances, let's click Cancel. We can change the absolute path to the project relative path by copying the folder containing the WI app to our project folder. Alright, now we have all of the resources that we need for our project. Let's add one more Use Application or Browser activity and indicate the web page. Have you noticed any differences? It begins with Use Browser and specifies a browser type. It only needs the URL when working with web pages. Let's examine Use Application or Browser properties in more detail. The properties are categorized as Common, Input, Input/Output, Miscellaneous, Options, and Options Browser. Let's begin with Common. Continue on error allows automations to continue running even if a specific activity fails. Boolean values, true or false, are supported here. The display name is the name assigned to the activity. The timeout property sets the time limit for the activity to complete before generating an error. The default value is 30 seconds. Now let's move on to the Input section. The properties in this panel are the same as those in the Designer panel. These properties can be edited either in the Designer panel or in the Properties panel. This category allows us to configure various settings for the target application. First, we have the Arguments property. This property allows us to specify parameters to pass to the target application at startup. For example, if the target application is Notepad, we can open a specific file by providing the full path to the file. Next, we have the File Path property. This property specifies the full path of the executable file to open. If a file path is specified, the URL property is cleared. Now it's important to note that when the path defined in the File Path field is dynamic, clicking Indicate Target on Screen in Child Activities generates an error if the target application isn't already open. Now you might be wondering, what is a dynamic file path? A dynamic file path is a type of file path that's generated or determined at runtime rather than being hard-coded or fixed in the source. An example of a dynamic file path could be a program that generates a report and saves it to the user's documents folder, with the file name being the current date and time. The file path would be something like C:/users/report_2022-11-20-30-15.txt, where the date and time are determined at runtime. Then we have the Selector property. This is a XAML fragment that stores the attributes of a user interface element. The selector can be used to identify the specific application or web page instead of indicating it. In the descriptor in Studio course, we'll learn more about this. Last but not least, we have the URL property. Here, we can specify the URL of the web page to open. If a URL is specified, the file path property is cleared. With these settings, we can easily configure the Use Application activity to interact with various applications as per our needs. Now let's move on to the next section. Input-Output element. The Input Element property allows us to select the target element that we want to interact with using this application. This element is stored in a UI element object and can be retrieved from the Output Element property of another UI automation activity. This means that we can pass the target element from a previous activity to this one without having to indicate it again. This field only supports UI element variables. The Output Element property allows us to output the target element indicated in this activity to a UI element variable which can then be reused in other activities. This field also only supports UI element variables. In simple words, the input element is used to pass the target element, and the output element is used to store the target element for further use. Moving on to the Options section. Here we have Close, Input Mode, Open, Resize Window, and Window Attach mode. A close property specifies when the target application should be closed after the automation has finished executing all of the activities within the do container. With never set as its value, the application will never close after completing the execution of the process. If set to If opened by App Browser, it'll close only if the application was opened by the Use Application or Browser activity. And if it's set to Always, the application will close every time. Let's test this with the Never option. And the WI app didn't close. Next, we'll see the Input mode. With this, we can choose how the robot interacts with an application or website. It supports all 4 input methods: hardware events, simulate, Chromium API, and window messages. Additionally, there's a background mode option. As we already know, each one has its own benefits and limitations, so it's important to choose the one that best fits our specific needs. A variety of factors can influence input methods such as compatibility with the target application, speed of execution, attended or unattended scenarios, background or foreground operation, or hotkeys. The Chrome API, for example, is popular for automating web applications because it mimics the way that a real user interacts with a browser. Background mode refers to a state in which automation is running in the background but not visible. It's commonly used for tasks such as data processing, file monitoring, and other automated tasks that can take place without direct user interaction. This allows the user to continue their work without having to worry about automation taking up system resources. When it's enabled, it runs all of the activities within the do container in the background. It tries to use simulate or Chrome API input methods. It's important to note that complex activities using image or native text as targeting methods run as usual in the foreground. After we've developed the automation, we'll see a demonstration of this, so stay tuned. Let's move to Open property. With this, we can control under what condition our target application is opened. We have 3 options available for opening the target application: never, if not open, and always. By default, the setting is set to if not open, which means that the application will only be opened if it is closed while executing the process. Let's test out the always option. A new instance of the WI application has been launched. Now, another important feature is the ability to control the size of the application or browser. We have 4 options for resizing the window: None, Maximize, Restore to design time size, and Minimize. If we choose None, the application won't be resized. If we choose Maximize, the application will be maximized. If we choose Restore to design time size, it'll resize and move the application or browser to the size and position that it was at when it was indicated. For example, if the application was moved to the right corner of the screen whilst indicating it, it'll return to that position and size once the automation runs. And if we choose Minimize, the application will be minimized. Finally, let's explore the Window Attach Mode property. This feature determines how the activities inside the Do container search for their targets. We can choose between Application Instance and Single Window. If we choose Application Instance, the activities will search for the target UI element, including all of the parent and child windows, such as alerts and pop-ups. If we choose Single Window, the activities will only search for the selected window. This concludes the first part of the input methods and activities. We've covered the basics of input methods and input activities and how they can be used in automation processes. We've demonstrated how to use the Use Application or Browser activity to interact with different applications and web pages, as well as how to configure the properties of this activity to suit our needs. With this knowledge, in the next video, we'll continue building on this automation process and further explore the capabilities of input methods and input activities. Thank you for watching and happy automation!